Good morning. Let us begin the last day of our 5 days workshop. And I hope all of you have checked out of your residences if you have travel plans today. So as you know, this will be kind of the last formal session planned in the workshop. And then we will have some discussion topics after this, after John's session. And then we will be having your presentations on the mini project for deal structuring, after which we will try to close on time. So let's begin with today's sessions. We have already introduced John and Dr. Premnath also. So let us move on to his slides.
Today's session is what I started yesterday and stumbled over, so it was supposed to be today, so I'm pleased to be able to get back to it. I'm a great believer in that you can learn the mechanics of doing this activity, but it's also critically important to be able to communicate. And that's a particular skill set that's somewhat overlooked, but is important not only in negotiations, obviously, but in justification of what it is that you do. And bluntly, you're the ones that have to explain why what you do is worthwhile so that others believe in you and will finance your work. Otherwise, they won't. And you'll be constantly whining and complaining about too much work, not enough resources. So the communication to me is a key issue here. Building awareness. This is targeted on brand new offices and is also important as you begin to expand the office to continue to let your ultimate clientele know that you exist and what you're doing. The top line there is a number of ways that I have used to create awareness by reaching out, talking to people, showcasing faculty achievements, by events. A number of large American universities, the Techtransfer office pays a modest retainer fee to faculty in large STEM departments to be a point of contact, to be a champion, to explain what's going on, and fundamentally recruit opportunities for the office so that if someone has an idea, the faculty in this large department know they can go talk to a colleague to find out whether it's worthwhile dealing with the office. I know at Stanford, a number of years ago anyway, they have a central office, but they did not encourage faculty to come to the office. Okay? They always reached out, and they found certain faculties were very inventive, so they asked for monthly use for half a day of an office in the building so that people could drop by in their own building and sit down and chat without having to trudge across campus, or for some of these big campuses. I know at the Berkeley campus, they created a research park about a mile away, okay? And nobody went there. They couldn't figure out why. Then they figured it out. You got on if you had to get in your car and drive, you lost that parking spot. And when you were finished and came back, it wasn't there, and you had to waste your time. So they put a shuttle in place. So there are small, clever things like that you have to pay attention to. Now, increasingly offices are dealing with non-STEM activities, okay? And by that I mean they're called, the Brits call it SHAPE. Social sciences, humanities, arts, for the people, enterprises. And these are very, very interesting because in most of the medical or STEM areas, what you have is a gee whizzy invention. And you're looking for an application and a company that'll take it in because they see the opportunity. On the other side of the campus, the faculty have reached out into the community because there's a particular problem there that they want to study and help with. And they come up with a solution. It might be a workshop or a focus or something. And then the role of the tech transfer office is to help that faculty member, where there's market pull, okay, they found a solution, to scale and move the solution to other communities. So there's a whole area outside STEM where creative work is being done, and the office should be alert to looking for opportunities and then helping faculty and realizing they need help very different than the STEM folks. So this is emerging. The Brits are a leader in the area. They have incubators dedicated to this. They have accelerators. They have workshops explicitly focused on social innovations. And again, a social innovation is something, you got a hand up? All right.
About that researchers connecting to startups or to the institutions and calling people to that. So outreach activities so that research labs do not become museums. Okay, so we did some activities, but majorly one problem we stuck with, the research labs in the university, at one of the universities where I was working earlier. Of course, many of them used to work in silos as usual. We brought them together on a science day, introduced them to around 30 startups. And after that, next week, whole lot of, they started knowing each other. I saw them in a cafe and all that. But then 3 to 4 research associates from 2-3 research labs, they came and said, we can help these startups. But then they have equipments and all that. But business model is missing. Because normally research labs will work on funding from university, a research project, or funding from government research project, or any other agency where they get a research project. So they started expecting a project from an incubation center, which I could not give. Or they started maybe some funding from a startup, which startup is not funded. It is at very early stage, TRL 3 below. And we were not able to find out a solution. So is there any model, or even anybody here in the audience also, but first question is to you, is there any model, or how do you find out, or how do you sell this to your own university and you get it running somewhere?
Get what running?
So that the startups and the research associates work together, or startups get access to the labs?
Okay. I'll give you, my answer to that question is this. At the University of Florida, there was an abandoned hospital which they turned into a multi-tenant, multi-use building. Okay? And it was placed very close to the campus. And so there was a big foyer where they had coffee and donuts regularly. And so they encouraged people to come. And as Jane Muir would say, bump shoulders. Okay, there were research laboratories up top in the incubator. There were sophisticated scientific equipment. And the idea was they held events to bring different people together. Okay, someone stood up and said basically hello, sat down, stopped talking, and donuts and coffee and tea were shared to really begin some interactions, such as, what do you do? Well, I do this, that, and the other thing. What's the problem? So creating places where people collide, okay, is part of the function of the office. You don't need a lot of money, okay? And when people say, well, maybe I can help you with something, you don't need a grant to get started. There's the desire of, let's have lunch together and talk, and you find the personalities are compatible, so let's work together and see whether we can make something happen. So my answer is create spaces or events where people interact from different backgrounds, okay, and allow them to talk. They're scientists or engineers, or social science. They love to talk all the time. So, okay. So if you're interested in this, I would suggest you look at what's happening in the United Kingdom. For several years, we in the States invited the Brits to come over and talk at our annual meeting, and it was fascinating what they were doing. The other thing at Florida State University, I reported to the Vice President of Research, who was responsible for research all across the campus. Okay? And when I went to tell him about some of the opportunities like this in social sciences, he was really, really pleased, okay? Because his office was supporting the research careers and activities in the non-STEM area. So as Vice President of Research, he was affecting activities across the campus. So the Techtransfer office was not, at FSU, was not a STEM office, okay? All right. You saw a bit of this yesterday, so I'll just burn through this. This is the Stanford graphic. It's available. It's really, really simple to explain to people how the parts interact, how you go from the beginning to the end, where the risks are, where you have to spend time looking for somebody. I found on our campus, when I went to talk to a faculty member, they kind of sat there, looked at me and said, all right, stop. I'm a real busy person. I need to hustle. I'm an entrepreneurial academic. I need to hustle money for my laboratory. I have to hire and fire people, keep them productive, okay? And here you are talking to me about something that has a very modest chance of success. Maybe we'll find a company, maybe we won't, okay? Why should I waste my time with you? It was at that point I was able to point to colleagues at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, where the senior faculty member had told me that this tech transfer stuff was critically important to his own academic career. Why? His people would graduate, most of them did not become academics, there weren't enough jobs. They went into government, but also mostly into industry. He would go visit them. In industry, they had budgets he couldn't dream of, equipment he couldn't dream of. And they were solving and addressing issues where he had a bit of a handle on it. So there was a possibility of a collaboration there. And he said to me, this tech transfer stuff is critical to my own career. Okay? In the United States, here as well, you can access unique money only if there's an academic and industrial partner working together. Okay? There are grants. They're for that. So this is a useful graphic I found. Hard to see. Sorry. It's a report out of the EU by a friend of mine, friend of ours, Allison, former president of Autumn. And it basically explains when you do research, here's the outputs from the research, here's the knowledge transfer channels whereby that knowledge is put into writing or some formal mechanism, and then leads to interacting with the users who use it, and then have impact that you can measure quantitatively in terms of jobs and other things. Kevin Cullen did this work. It was like a tar baby for him. He just kept working at it for 4 or 5 years until he felt he really had it. And he showed it to me. Well, anyway, I won't get into that. He then went back and said, all right, these are formal mechanisms. Let's measure the amount of grant or other cash expended for each of these activities and the number of documents. Okay? And it turned out that the licensing and spin-out portion, 2% of the money, 2% of the documentation. What's the lesson? The vice president of research is responsible for all of this. So when you go to him or her, you represent 2% of what the office is concerned about. Okay? So you're going to be lucky if you can get time. So you need to communicate the importance of what you're doing. And I always frame it in terms of, okay, this is another one. I always explain that what we do benefits the researcher and helps them advance their career by accessing new resources and new people. As I've said before, enhances further the reputation of the institution by showing to the community the types of real problems that the researchers are engaged in. It's academic, but at least it's advancing knowledge of certain key issues. As far as the community is concerned, in Tallahassee, 185,000 people. I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and most of the people had gone to the university. Many of their children went to the university, and then the kids left to the big city. Okay? And they looked to get married. And they didn't want to stay in the big city. They wanted to come back because they found Tallahassee a more family-friendly environment. But the jobs didn't exist. So I explained how spin-outs and startups were offering new, high-risk, but well-paid jobs. And the chamber got really interested. One of the very senior people came to me. He ran the big garbage dump recycling center, frankly. And he said to me, look, I want you to help us create an angel fund. We'll look to you for a couple of deal opportunities, but you obviously understand what this is all about. So I brought in people from Orlando and Atlanta to help the chamber realize that more was happening on the campus than just basic research leading to publications. And that enhanced the understanding of what was going on. Okay? And then finally, the government's always saying, well, do more with less. Well, okay, you are able to do this type of activity with small amounts of money. And if there are jobs created or big hits, Autumn gathered American data and showed that the chance of a deal where the cumulative royalty over the license life that accumulated $1 million in royalties, guess what the percents were of the deals? Make a guess. Anybody? Come on, I'm not putting you all to sleep. Someone, give me a guess. I'm going to stand here until someone says something. What do you think? What percent of deals have royalties that over the life of the license meet or exceed $1 million in America?
10 to 15%.
Sorry?
10 to 15%.
All right, I got 10% over here. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? 5%. 5% over here. Anyone else? 5%? All right. Answer, 2%. 2%. So, the chance of a big hit, trivial. The chance of a mega hit like a Taxol with $350 million, once in a decade. That's why Lita Nielsen and the rest of us say it's the impact, not the income. Okay? Because if you sell it on the income, you're going to be held short all the time. Even if you get a big hit. We had this massive big hit. We had a research, we were a public university. We had a research foundation, which allowed us a little more flexibility outside the government contract restraints. And that governing board looked as to what to do with what we thought might be $15 million in royalties flowing in. We underestimated big time. You know what happens when there's a lot of money coming into a campus, right? There's a food fight. And we had a dean who was smart enough to anticipate this, talked to the board and made a proposal. When this money comes in, we're going to use it. The president will get $1 million a year. We'll put up a fund for prospecting grants. Okay, we'll put up a fund for prototypes and gaps, and we'll put up a fund for really collaborative research that if results are interesting, you can go get some big federal monies. 2 hours later, bang, all done. The money kept flowing in. There was no food fight at all. It was brilliant. But when you have a mega hit like that, I was asked to go to Cambridge in England to explain. Tony Raven wanted me to explain to his staff what you do when you get a big hit, because he was anticipating one. Okay, so there's that. Now here is something a little hard. It's obvious here. Name of the faculty member, this is the title of the disclosure. These projects, in our office, we categorize projects anywhere from 0 to 5. 0, project disclosure received. 5, license deal done. Okay? Somewhere in there was IP identified and protected. An evaluation was done before that. Marketing was done. Company identified, negotiation, and then deal closed. So the idea was for those projects which were 3 and above, in other words, you were talking to a company, okay? You had 3 columns per fiscal year. One was money received contractually under the license. There's a license fee, so much money. There's a royalty received, okay? Were there grants received when the licensee and the university went and hunted money? They go here. And then this other were donations of equipment, some of which is significant, donations of software. And so we went through our office and did this analysis, and the bottom line was, when you add all these up, you get a number at the bottom, okay? These numbers are not hypothetical. The idea was to show the senior management that royalties will take time to come in, but in the interim, there's a cash flow that will help build the research base. And it's quantifiable, okay? So I cut and pasted out of my spreadsheet that went on 4 or 5 years on the other side of this. This is another tool to be able to show people that you can have an impact before a product hits the marketplace. Yeah, rats. Okay. Similar chart. All 3s are listed here. This is a deal done, product development underway, product in the marketplace, product out of the marketplace. And Taxol was here. This was an easy way to list projects and show the steps that the office and the researcher had to go through to find a company, and then the steps that the company took to get something in the marketplace. Okay? And then no matter how brilliant it was, the product died in the marketplace. Our Taxol process to manufacture, licensed to Bristol Myers Squibb, brought in enormous amounts of royalties. Then they decided they were moving from a chemical process to a biotech fermentation process. Had nothing to do with us. They were courteous enough to phone me 3 years ahead of time and tell me it was coming. Okay? But the point here, again, is to show the progress visually so that faculty can understand not only the words that you tell them, but actually see what's going on. Okay? And look, and you can talk about how long it takes to negotiate, how long product development takes. You can differentiate software product development from a med tech device from a pharma device. And it's a simple way to show people comprehensively what's going on and why get involved in it. Now, again, back to the Brits. They decided, or Parliament decided for the community, thank you very much, you're going to have to show us how all this public money for research is leading to impact. And we don't want hand waving. Give us examples. So the Brits put together these boxes, historically went back and looked at how faculty described the potential impact of the political impact, the educational impact. They put up this website where you could go in and look at the language used successfully to describe impacts, okay, and use it in your own application. And it covered both STEM and share type activities. But again, it focused down onto the research is great, publications are great, but why does it matter? This was the way that the Brits used to communicate that in a standard manner with standard language, so everyone was on the same song sheet. All right, this was an attempt by a friend of mine, Angus Livingstone at the University of British Columbia back in the 80s to do the same thing. Okay, he looked at the societal impact, the academic impact. Okay, how many publications, grants, et cetera, et cetera. He looked at the financial impact, how much money was brought in. Looked at spin-off company impacts in terms of jobs and external investment, a lot of which came from outside the University of British Columbia community. So the university was acting as a magnet to bring money in from the outside. This was something the leadership understood, but government really hadn't got a handle on. So having said that, I'll then continue, and I showed you yesterday the power of using a video, right? Musical pacifier. You really understand what's going on. And I urge you to look at quick YouTube opportunities, okay? 90 seconds, but with a script, okay? You get the faculty member a script, and then you have it posted. And when you do your marketing, you send the link to everybody. And rather than read a long list of really interesting, marvelous paper, click here. In 90 seconds, the person's engaged. They're paying attention. Okay, that's the power of it. Again, this, all right, I used to carry this sort of stuff in my back pocket, a product of successful tech transfer. So when I talked to the community, it was blah, 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 leads to this. Oh, really? Yes. Have you heard of Gatorade? Yeah. That came from a university. Okay. Here's a vial of Taxol. Here's Crest toothpaste. The stainless fluoride in it was invented at the University of Indiana. These are old, well-known opportunities that go back, okay? I created the Better World project at Autumn to gather stories and make them available, stories of products based on inventions from academic centers. This morning, in prep, I went down and did a search, and the one word I used was India. Entries, 0. So, I remind you, this is an important thing, never mind Autumn. STEM Global has issued tabletop books for 2 years, a couple of years ago. Beautifully done, okay? Each story, simple to understand, and each a basis of a tech transfer deal, okay? It's just absolutely fascinating. Now, let me close. The rest of the stuff is pretty mundane stuff, but I want to tell you a couple of other vehicles that you might consider to communicate. At the Autumn meeting, Oren Hrskovitz was given the Bayh-Dole Award, the highest award that the community gives. And he stood up and talked about the impact of this tech transfer. And the vehicle was that he talked about how it influenced his dad and his dad's life. Okay? He was able to talk about his dad and penicillin during the war, polio in the 50s, and other innovations from universities for his heart condition, okay? Drugs and other things. So the vehicle was highly personal. I did an exercise called FSU, A Day in the Life, where a person who is employed by FSU wakes up, has breakfast, puts strawberries on their cereal. Strawberries are varieties from the University of California, not Cornell, unfortunately. And then every interaction at lunch, visit to the MD in the hospital, a lot of medical equipment, coming home. The kids came home and started playing with a CD-ROM of learning about the impact of climate change in the environment, all stuff that came from FSU. Able to show concretely products that led to interesting spots in the life of people, okay? And dinner were oysters, where the detection of certain bacteria was a diagnostic test kit from FSU. I've mentioned the Better World Report, which has something like 500 or 600 stories. They're publicly available. Use them any way you want. Then at a higher level, Autumn and Big Bio engaged a number of economists and asked them to use economic analytical tools to quantify the impact of academic licenses in the United States over 20 years. All sorts of deals, okay? They came back and found that the sales of the companies amounted to 0.3% of the national GDP. It sounds small, but when you look at the size of the American economy, 0.3% is a hell of a big number. People were really surprised. They went further and asked the question, how many person years of jobs were created? At least 250,000. Okay? So a study was done to show the larger macroeconomic impact of the work after a period of time. So you should be able to have tools that you can talk about all the way from the faculty member, the type of deal done, the type of products in the marketplace, to the macroeconomic impact. Okay? And I'm not any smarter than any of you here. I'm not any more handsome. It's just that in America we got started earlier. And we want to tell you about this so that some of these things might be of use to you, either through an association throughout India or at your own institution. This is fairly easy stuff to do that I've been talking about here. All right, let me just wrap. Oh, yeah, right. I showed you this before. That's Ashley and I. I think it's Jaipur going up the hill to the fort a number of years ago. Relationships, oh man, that's where the action happens. You've got to talk to the inventors. You've got to reach out. You can't sit in your office and expect them to come to you. You've got to be truthful, good news, bad news. And the first meeting I had of a company that came to the campus, it was obvious to me, I don't know, suit on, they weren't interested in me. They were interested in the faculty member. And the head of the corporation turned to me and said, your job is to get the deal through the bureaucracy at the institution. I thought, that's very pragmatic. That makes a great deal of sense. Okay? So part of the your role is to help conquer the bureaucracy, the inertia in the bureaucracy, which is normal. You will have to deal with your general counsel, whose job absolutely as protection of the institution against anything else. And this is risky stuff. The name of the institution is at risk. So you've got to be able to explain others that do this and how they do it to minimize the risk. Okay. You build a pipeline? Oh, that's simple. At one point, you got to stop talking and doing. I've had deals where we went to the altar and we're about to sign the deal and it fell apart. Tough. I've been fortunate. Well, I've always run a small office. I've told you before, we did 12 licensing deals a year and 2 or 3 spinouts. That's modest compared to Cornell or Boston or MIT or Harvard or the big guys. And a colleague of mine in Chile, where I was doing consulting work, said, we want to really see what this tech transfer stuff, we want to go to MIT. I said, all right, go there, be frustrated. You're never going to become MIT. Don't set your sights on being MIT. Set your sights on lessons learned at MIT. Look at institutions in America or Britain or France or elsewhere which are perhaps peers, and understand how tech transfer offices operate where the industrial base in the country is similar to the industrial base in your country. Okay? I got listening to someone pontificating on Autumn about, what a great job this was, how fantastic it was, and on and on and on. And I stood up and I said, all right, look, I had just come down from Canada. So I was unknown. I said, look, America is the only country in the globe where you can do tech transfer without a passport. Everybody else has to deal cross borders, except for that one country. So yeah, we're 40 years ahead. Fine. Tremendous lessons to be learned. Okay? Willingness to talk. And keep that in mind. Customize your expectations. I think I got one more. Oh, yeah, I don't have to tell you about this. All right. At FSU, a small school, nationally known, not internationally known. We started without a medical school. 10 years later, one was built. We did U.S. provisional applications on disclosures 80% of the time. We then converted 70% of the provisionals to full patents. And when you put the two numbers together, it tells you that we filed on 50% of our disclosures. We went that off. The next thing is Lita and Kathy Koo have told our community that their own experience shows that academic research is usually 4 or 5 years ahead of industry's ability to understand and particularly use it. So in their offices, they patent more than perhaps they should, simply because they try and market, no one's interested. Well, don't give up. Let's keep a patent in place because 5 years later, the field of understanding might well change. So what we used to do, we would file in the United States, and then only if there was an interest in a spin-out company would we proceed with the first phase of a PCT, $5,000 or $7,000. Okay, why? Because that was a hard asset that could be licensed into the raw startup, gave them something else to raise money on. Did we file foreigns under the PCT? Never, 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 never. Couldn't afford to. Dick told you occasionally they would do it. We never did. Couldn't afford it. And then lastly, the big decision point, the American system is such that you have to pay a maintenance fee. And so that gives you an opportunity to decide you want to continue to keep the patent or abandon it. And in many cases, the abandoned decision is made as the 7.5-year maintenance fee comes up. Okay? You've tried to market it when you got the disclosure. You go through the 5 years before people begin to understand it. And then you're faced with a small, several $1,000 maintenance fee. I would go back to the faculty member if they were still at the institution, if they were still interested in that research program 7.5 years after they disclosed to you, and ask their advice. And most times it's, I'm no longer interested, or yeah, abandon it. We've given it a go. I got something else for you because I like the way I can work with you. You get stuff done. And so this, I'm finished here. Yep. Wanted to show you particularly the importance of your telling people what you do is important. Because if you don't tell them, nobody else is going to tell them. And they need to understand that when you talk to them about things like this, you're not blowing smoke in their face about how important this is. You can point to particular products in America and elsewhere, here in India as well, through the STEM books, okay, which are representative for those 2 years. This stuff actually works. And for an institution that is thinking ahead in terms of decades, not the next quarter, thank you very much, but decades, this is a good, excellent investment to make. So I'm done. Questions?
Go ahead.
Premnath?
The major issue we face in most of the licensing cases from R&D institute is the liabilities from the company side. So how much liability can a R&D institute take in an agreement?
In America, we have language that says, we ain't liable for nothing. That's what it says. It says, we will license you what we've got as is. It's up to you to discover what that is, how good it is, whether it works or not. We won't guarantee it'll even work in your hands. The Taxol technology did not work in the hands of Bristol people. And our inventor told me, these are really good chemists. So from a liability viewpoint, the liability is contractually passed entirely to the company. I take great efforts to explain that to them, that they're taking the risk. And therefore, if it works, they get 95% of the proceeds, and we get a small percent. Okay? Now, there are instances where product gets in the marketplace fabulously successful, and there are legal suits. And the university is called to come into court to talk about its role in the invention. Okay? And there's due diligence, and so again, we're very careful not to accept liability, to explain what our role is and is not. And by signing the license agreement, the licensee acknowledges that we are not liable. So that's the answer to your question. We've had 40 years to get to that point. We didn't start off like that with everybody saying, hey, that makes a lot of sense, great. No. But there was a community of discussion in the United States at Techtransfer people every year. We talked about things like this. We adopted attitudes of we will take this type of position, and then hung tough for quite some time. Does that answer the question?
Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can I add to that, John? Yeah, please. Beyond signing an agreement, in the agreement that we have no liability, we require them to take out an insurance policy to guarantee, to back up that commitment. If they are a large company, we will allow them to self-insure. If they are a small company, we will require them to buy an insurance policy from an insurance company and to name the university as additional insureds. And let me give you the best example I know of how this worked in practice. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute developed a treatment for hepatitis B. They licensed it to a small company. that did a phase 1 trial. And based on that phase 1 trial, they did a partnership with Eli Lilly. And Eli Lilly did a phase 2 with about 20 to 25 patients. Of those 25 patients, 7 died and the rest needed liver transplants. An absolute catastrophe. How they didn't see the warning signs in the phase 1, I don't know, but it was hepatitis B, which is a liver disease. Not only did the small company survive unscathed and was successful with something else and had a good exit, Memorial Sloan Kettering wasn't even sued. Eli Lilly had absorbed all of the liability and took all of the payments. So that's what you got to do. You've got to protect yourself. Because if you're a small company and you hurt somebody, is that person going to want to sue a small company? Or are they going to want to sue a university which might have a big endowment and lots of money to pay? So you've got to protect the big company. The words in our liability protections were non-negotiable. We wouldn't alter one word. Okay?
It's obvious from what Ashley has said that this type of insurance is for healthcare products that touch human beings. Okay? Software for productivity or something, not. There's a lot less liability there. But anything that touches a human being or an animal, like a thoroughbred racehorse that are worth a lot of money, then you need not only the language, but evidence of a third-party insurer naming you and others to protect you when it hits the fan. Okay? Premnath, you're part of this. Want to say anything? Questions?
There is one question.
All right.
Let's get the questions. Yeah.
What you suggested is right. In the US, you will pay only one renewal fee in 4.5 years. You will not pay the 7.5 year renewal fee if it is not licensed. Right? In India, we have to pay the renewal fees every year. So what will be your suggestion? Till when should we wait for?
This is trickier than a simple question. I'll tell you why. You could have a patent. You go market it. There's a company that should be interested, and they say they're not interested. Okay. And you try and market, and nothing happens. Okay? So you come to a point where you decide, let's give up. Maybe there's 4 or 5 years you've been trying. Industry's moved on. There is some interest, but no one wants to touch your stuff. The big company is waiting for you to abandon the patent. Okay? Once you abandon the patent, away they go in action that would have infringed your patent. So the answer to the question isn't as simple as this number of years. You got to really look out as to what's going on, who's doing what, and who should be paying attention. I had a case where I tried to market. The company said, yeah. Then I had my lawyer write their lawyer and explained that one of the presentations they made at a scientific conference touched in the area of our research. And there was a small reminder of our patent application at the bottom. The lawyers were clever enough, that brought people to the table. So I don't have a really simple answer, okay? Sometimes you keep paying simply to keep it alive because industry might come, but it all depends on how you use your budget, because in America, the patent budget is fixed. If you continue to pay this, you can't pay for a new patent. So at our place, we had to abandon something in order to pay for a new patent. And we had, of course, a little bit of new money every year. Answer the question? Okay. You have a question?
Yeah, my question is a little from the other side actually. Let us say we signed the agreement with the company and it's not going the proper direction. There is some kind of breach of the provisions of the terms of the agreement. So how to have the balance exit clause in the agreement? Some suggestions on this side.
All right. You've used several explosive words. It's not going in the right direction. That's something. And then you use the word breach. The breach is a highly defined legal term. Okay? So it's not going in the right direction. Well, you've determined it doesn't seem to be working because you've reached out and talked to the parties and found either the personalities don't click or the results are not reproducible in the hands of the company and they're beginning to lose interest. So you have to decide why it's not going in the right direction. Okay? If it's a strategic change in the direction of the company, you're out of luck. If the proponent, the champion inside the company gets promoted, the next person who comes in, not interested, you're kind of out of luck. Now, if things are going along and there's a, quote, breach, okay, which is the lack of fulfillment of an obligation under the contract, okay, that's serious. And when you try and talk it through and find it's not working, you begin to socialize and bring in your lawyers, okay, and tell the other side that we need to sit down. We've got some options here, okay? If you want to terminate, then we'll terminate without getting into the legal niceties of under the breach, okay? And we'll partner friendly, but you owe us money, we'll make sure that happens, and then we part ways. If, on the other hand, there's a real breach and they continue to use your technology without making payments to you, you got a problem. And the problem then becomes, what are you going to do about it? All right? I had a situation where we had some real trouble going on and learned that the company had made a donation to Florida State University, okay, independent of the deal, and the president was not going to be happy if I had a legal suit against the company. So you've got to watch the environment within which you're working. Now that's may not address your answer, but you can begin to escalate the conversation and get a higher level of person involved after discussions of what will work or what will not work. And then finally, it might be that effectively the deal's abandoned, okay? It's not working, it's still in place, it's not working, everyone throws up their hands and says, all right, forget it. And a letter is sent to the company, effectively we're terminating the deal. Even though they have not fulfilled their obligations, there is a potential of a legal breach which could take you into court. You think you're going to win. It's just, it's not worth it. People have moved on. The technology that was very promising didn't show the same promise. I had meteorology invention based on computer analysis, worked wonderfully well. Startup was formed to commercialize it, and they had real trouble reproducing the results. Okay? And they really went in and made every effort to make it happen. Sometimes it's just not working out. And rather than call a breach because they were backing away, it was just, okay, let's throw up our hands, put a letter in place, it's terminated, it's finished, and we'll part friends and see what else we might do. And we never again talked to them the way it was. Answer the question?
Again, one more thing. Claiming the, let us say, the dues what is to be company has to pay to the R&D lab actually. So after termination, it is good that we should go to arbitration only for settlement of disputes.
You use the word arbitration, right? Arbitration is a very defined term. Before arbitration, there's the issue of mediation, okay? Before mediation, there's the two parties talking to each other. So again, how you escalate in terms of the disagreement depends on the circumstances, the people, and the interest driving it, okay? I had a legal counsel in the Office of Research that said there's no way we're going to be at the whims of an arbitrator. Okay, so we're never going to do arbitration. So John, go figure, solve it, and if it doesn't work out, terminate it. But again, it depends on the interest on both sides, their various levels of conversation, okay? And then I've had deals where the arbitration center is either New York, Geneva, or Hong Kong. And you have to decide which it is. Okay? Then, in discussion with legal counsel, it's a case of, well, wait a minute, we're going to have to travel from Florida to Hong Kong. We're going to have to pay for our room and rent in Hong Kong for a week. And someone's got to cover the costs of the attorneys and not going to do it. So our state government in Florida, our legal counsel in the Office of Research said arbitration, we're never going to go there, it's too expensive, you'd lose total control, and we never had a deal where there was enough money on the table to go there. And we were incredibly lucky that Bristol Myers Squibb, with our Taxol deal, met every obligation. Okay? The onus on their side, they didn't want us slowing them down as they introduced this new product that saved lives into the marketplace. So they decided they had to do it right and move forward, and everyone was happy. We were lucky. Okay? Was there another question?
I think we should.
We're done?
Yeah, we should stop now. Maybe we can take more questions during the tea break after Dr. Premnath's session.
Okay.
So over to you, Dr. Premnath.
Hari, you want to mention briefly about the current status of arbitration clauses among government departments?
Mostly it is DIS, Delhi International Arbitration Center, which is mandated for all the CSR labs.
Yeah.
So in very, very rare cases, we are allowed SISA, Singapore International Arbitration, for international only. And for all Indian nationals, only DIS, no other. No. Even for international, we are able to convince them. If they have a branch in India, they agree to it. Yeah. And no courts in CSIR, we try to exclude them. It's a bit risky. No, we are able to sign with Shell and others, all international. Yeah. Only in one case, SISC we went.
Okay, let's stop there. Yeah. So I just thought it's good to. So I just wanted to pick up on a few themes and then take it from there. The themes, one is of course increasing your flow of invention disclosures coming into your office. The second is the process itself, and the third is a little bit of portfolio management. We have covered some of it before, so in the decision processes, so I won't spend that much time. So let's try and finish in time itself. The first part let's look at is proactively getting people to file patents. Okay, very often there are sometimes when you hear from people that people are just filing patents just for the heck of it and so on and so forth. Our general experience has been that if you the inventors, I don't think feel that. I mean, this is an imagination sometimes I feel of people in Delhi. With the inventors might as well just go and publish, right? Very often if you, so it's actually many tech transfer offices actually will have to, or IP offices have to work very hard to get a pipeline of IP coming. Okay, so in fact it's discouraging if that happens and people think that it's just being done just to pad up numbers or whatever it is. But anyway, let's first understand what could be motivations for an inventor and why they would want to, and for you as an organization, why you would want to do that as well. So as a institute, you're by filing those patents, you're actually also taking credit as the originator organization, and the inventors also are getting credit for it as well, right? You're also creating property, right? It's actually being codified into a property, a formal property as well, which basically means any kind of property is then transactable, right? The moment, say, people created this whole idea of private property, it became transactable, it increases efficiency in the economy, you can actually trade on all of those things as well. The other thing that you can do is, since it's in that pipeline, you are able to guide the process of future development of the invention. you are able to set up those arrangements with people who will commercialize it, take it ahead and so on. And you need to explain that to the inventors as well, that that is an important aspect as well. Ability to attract resources, talent. The moment you have some of this, people are willing to say put money in if the patent is at least valuable or has some you have a way to protect it from being exploited by others without your permission. And of course, in many cases it is an indicator of inventive potential of your organization as well. So, we have cases where companies visit us and they want to see your entire patent portfolio, right, just to see is it, do you have any work in that space, do you have any capability to do inventions. At one time in NCL, it was also a way to see whether people are aware of IP, you know. Many companies used to even look for that, okay. Do they know how to deal with IP and so on. And of course, today it is part of rankings and recognitions and so on and so forth as well. Now, I think as it has been told by our experts, the most satisfaction that most of the inventors get is to see their ideas in use, right. So, that is the best way to align with them. If you are running an IP, an IP office, what you have to talk to them is about how this will help them take it to the end use, right. They may or may not be necessarily motivated by either your financial returns, they may also not be motivated by the rankings of your organization, they may also not be motivated necessarily by a story about mandates and so on and so forth, okay. It is more about being able to take that science and putting it to use. So, I think that should be probably your story. I hope all of you know that is part of rankings as well, right. So, NIRF has a scoring, as a scale called NIRF Innovation Rankings, where patent filings and all are there. So, for many academic institutions, this has sort of become like a part of that process. So, they do this for that reason, but we will try and do for the right reasons. There are a few lessons here. This is some data. This slide is actually based on Autumn's data on the right that you see here. Sorry, it is a little faded, but this was courtesy of Oren Hershowitz in Columbia. He has now moved on, but please understand that innovation is a portfolio activity. It is not something where you can upfront tell what is going to be a winner, right. It is extremely difficult to pick a patent and say that this one is going to be a winner. So, typically it is a funnel, right, and the funnel typically has a lot coming in at this end and a few coming out at this other end. So, there is this end, by the way, it says research funding, this is in hundreds of $billion. This is it says 809 billion. This is a period of almost 14 years, I think, for US universities, and you can see there are about 300,000 invention disclosures, some 175,000 patent applications, about half that they mentioned, right. So many awarded, another half probably, and then finally, so many active licenses, about 37,000 options of 9261 startups, and finally 130 plus new drugs and devices and so on. Now, if you want to have these, you often need to have this at the other end as well. There is no other way, in my opinion. You have to create a pool to draw upon, and it is quite hard to predict which one is going to be really successful, and there are many such cases as well. Even in the business world, we see it is very hard to predict who will be a winner. So, we always end up doing portfolio wise activities. So, even in startups, we should have 100 startups to maybe have 4 or 5 winners, right. And so, your question might be, how do we invest in all of those, right. The answer here is not to necessarily think of the entire investment on it on day one, but to progress each of them to the extent possible, find out what has potential as we go along, and therefore keep increasingly investing in those which move along further, right. But in the early stages where you are not investing as much, you have a larger pipeline. That applies to patents also, right. You can, in India, you will not incur as much cost. So you can afford to do that, and as you go further down you keep narrowing your pipeline, but at the same time you watch for indicators of what has some potential or not, right. One more thing to remember is, in the innovation business you are in the business of supporting, right, risk. You want people to fail, right, if they want to do pretty large technologies or important technologies. So and this is something which your auditors and so on don't understand, right. They are used to a production process, right. So please understand that difference very clearly, which is that we are in the business of, in effect, creating failures, right, so that there can be a few which succeed, right. It is very much unlike an ongoing factory where you invest money in raw materials and you produce something out at the end of it, and that is something which many of you need to communicate. Sometimes it is hard, I understand, but if this mindset is not there in the TTOs, you end up constraining it, over constraining it right up front, and therefore killing the whole process, because you do not know. I mean, you will imagine a TTO or an IP office which says we will only do 10 out of 100 and do that, and there are wise men here who are sitting and telling us which those 10 should be, right. That is what happens in many cases as well. That is very disastrous thing to do, okay. The best of people can't predict it, okay. So let us be clear about it. Okay, the invention disclosure process itself. Here is an example of a flow. So I just run you through a specific flow that we had set up and run for many years. So the invention disclosure comes in from the researcher. This is researcher. This is the IP group at NCL, and there are partners who are working with us. The invention disclosure comes in. There's the mandate was that within a week we should have a meeting with the inventors, right. I mean, these are some internal rules we had set up, right. That meeting has to happen with the inventor there, our team, right, and typically there will be 1 or 2 people in that team, maybe there are 3 people sitting in. One would ask the question from the perspective of, is it patentable? Second would ask the question of, how do I commercially advance it, is it attractive, and so on. We are not trying to come to an answer there, but we want to understand that, ask those questions, that is it, okay. And in that meeting itself we would put down our rough plan, right. And this was necessary because we wanted to do it fast, and otherwise our inventors would go and publish it, right, and students would always be very nervous wanting to finish their degrees and so on. You do not want to sit and make them wait. If you make them wait, you will not even get the invention disclosure, by the way, right, because there is no policing there, right. They do not have to come and give it to you. So that you have to understand that it is important to keep an efficient process. This also was appreciated for the reason by inventors that they were being asked certain questions which had helped bring out certain aspects of the invention. So one of the key goals is to flesh out the invention. Person describes what they have done, but they may not describe the invention. So I will come back to that a little later, how you do that, right, which is important at this stage. From here we would take a preliminary filing decision, right, either it is no or yes, based on some of these inputs. We may take inputs, especially a little bit of a preliminary patentability assessment to understand what is patentable. If it is no, we can discuss other ways to add value. You do not have to, it is not like a closed door, right. It is actually, you can still create value. It is not everything needs to be patented to create value as well, right. So we would explore those, right, and if it is yes, it would go for drafting, right, and our team is expected to vet claims, right. That means look at the claims for what strategy we want to follow, suggest the claims we want to have, and also sometimes be careful about what was filed before and what is going to be filed in the future, right. that is something which your patent agent cannot necessarily help you with, right? Because you might have a whole slew of activities coming. If you cover, if you put in words which basically kill your next invention, that's also a problem, right? So you need to think through that a little bit. Also you need to understand what claims are possible, in this case what will be strong and so on and so forth, and with that we are ready to file applications, and it's sent for filing. As you know, in CSIR the Delhi office does the final filing as well. Now in this process you should set some timelines in your office. So in from this invention disclosure to this filing, okay, date, we were working maybe 6-7 years back with a timeline of about 45 days, okay. But sometimes there will be delays at the Delhi end also. So we pushed hard to get that done, because otherwise we would lose some of these opportunities. Typical pressures we have is, one is publication, right. The second is that there is a visiting company coming, okay, which is visiting, and we need to talk to them, right, and we need to protect something in advance of that meeting as well, or there is some other kind of a conversation of a similar time happening. This is a small clip from shot from John Hopkins University's tech transfer office, right, and you will see that they have made a commitment saying that, let me just read that out for you. It says JHTV, which is their tech transfer office, will contact you within 2 days of receiving your disclosure, right. Within 2 weeks it will confer with you regarding your disclosure. Within 2 weeks of receiving your disclosure, 2 months it will give a written determination with 2 months about the commercialization plan, right. This is a commitment that the tech transfer office is making to inventors. Do you do it? Does your office give hard timelines that we will do this within this time frame? Okay. Yeah, commercialization plan, whatever, but even this 2 weeks or timelines for filing and so on and so forth is something which you might want to think about. We have, in one case, I am on a committee for a DST lab, where we have shrunk the times quite a bit, because I insisted that you put a timeline on this. I want to see the timeline of when you will finish the filing. Otherwise it would be endless, people would pass it on and wait for, but there are 2 dates which are very clear, the disclosure date and the date when it is filed. You can see how long it takes, and you can actually tabulate it for some of your filings and see how long it is taking you, okay. Okay. Yeah. How crucial is it? Let me ask you that. Yeah. So, yeah. So how much effort should you put in that? You think? Like, how do you decide how much effort you should put into that? Yeah. 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 Yeah, so we would do a preliminary patentability assessment here, but I just want to ask you also, you should weigh your response against how important a decision is, okay. So for example, your provisional patent filing, how much does it cost CSIR? 8,000 rupees, right? So how much effort should you put in for that? What do you think? If you ask your auditors, no, for them 8,000 is like sky, and so on and so forth. But what do you think should be the effort that is needed? Should you be calling a committee to review a decision which is 8,000 rupees? Should you take 2 months to call the committee and take a decision on that? Right? Isn't it silly? Right? So please think through that. I mean, in your own organizations, it will be possible to streamline your process, right? The real decision happens when you're really investing money, right? And that's where you need to take a call on that.
Like that only.
Yeah.
Our SOP says you take the report from something like
Yeah.
lab from the rodent, and with that report you just submit to IQCS.
Yeah.
So here itself a lot of lag is there.
Yeah. So yeah. So I heard from somebody else to say, never break the law of the land, okay, but rules are another thing. you have to go and convince people that it's stupid, otherwise you are taking your organization down the tube, okay. But I'm just trying to tell you that these are problems in our systems as well, which is there across institutions. We need to understand that it's not required, right? It is somebody sitting in isolation, maybe in Delhi, wrote it up, right? Right. So you please can moderate that, right, because it's not what you need is a preliminary one to do that first one. But when it comes to to what degree do you want to do it? That is fine, but how much do you want to spend on it? Suppose, let's say it costs a project, URDIP, it costs them 1 month to do, okay, and one person spending 10, 20 hours on it. For that 8,000 rupees, you want to do it, right? So it's a little bit of, I think this is where directors, TTO heads have to exercise their thinking a little bit, right? Anyway, some of you, if you feel constrained, there will be others in this room who can possibly modify their things or their processes. But I am just trying to tell you that these are things which you have to think whether it's really required and what are we trying to accomplish at the end of it, right? So anyway, there is an assessment that is done, right? We can do it at different levels of complexity, right? Also, the question also comes up, who is using it to take what decision, right? Very often we end up generating paper which nobody reads, right? Why? What are we doing it for, right? Instead, let's take a decision based on something which we are convinced is of some use, okay? So anyway, you can do a preliminary assessment, you can do all of that, but if you were to spend say 5 man days of your scientist time on it, at that stage it may not be worth it, okay. It's something which you might want to do when you're say entering PCT, maybe 12 months later or whatever it is, okay.
Feasibility assessment will help you in drafting your claims also.
Exactly. So that comes, if it's a provisional and a complete, by complete you can do it in 12 months time, right? It helps you do that. So that is a good asset. This is good information for your researcher if it's done well to generate some extra data, right? For that purpose it's worth doing, okay. But should it hold back your pipeline? I don't think so, okay. You should quickly move on it rather than trying to hold it back, because there's a student there or a PhD scientist, a scientist there who is keen to publish, okay. Okay, let's move on. So sometimes there are situations where they are not proactively disclosing inventions. One is of course streamline the process that it's efficient. Second is don't expect them to do too much work. There are certain places where the scientist is told, "आप मुझे ये 30 पेज का form भर के दो," right? I'm telling you, I would walk away. I don't care, I would just walk away, right? It's not a good use of my time. I didn't come here for that purpose. That's it. Okay, so for this, I think you need to think through your enabling mechanisms, and sometimes you need to have even service providers who are supporting you in doing some of these things. Basically, the policies, the strategy that you follow, the service providers that you have to support you. There was a time when all scientists were expected to write their own patents, right? That was not going to be a practical situation, right? It's also actually not practical. In fact, you can get it done much more efficiently if you engage support for that. URDIP doing the patentability assessments is fine, right? Similarly, you can have other partners as well doing it. There are some other mistakes which some institutions do. One is they ask the inventors to find their own funds for filing patents. Many academic institutions do that and it's built to their project, right?
They have done a cost for that. If you want to get it patented, then you have to give this much of amount so that we can forward it further.
Yeah.
For the prescription, commission.
Yeah. So this in my opinion is a mistake, right, because this is why, after all the organization is owning it, they should arrange the funds. Why should they be asking them to arrange the funds? Okay. So this reduces your flow considerably in terms of patent flows, because they can choose not to spend money over there, or they may not have it at all. And if they don't have it and it's a good idea, you are missing out on those ideas by not filing on it, right, as an academic institution. You should reduce the time of the inventors on drafting, answering queries, and so on and so forth. Also reduce the barriers to publication, presentations to a minimum, and this is definitely one of the most important things you need to do as an institution, right. Reduce the bureaucracy, the paperwork, right. Most scientists and inventors get very irritated if people who don't know the field and who even don't read ask them questions. Okay, it's very simple, but this is what happens, right. So some novice in the field at the other end of the call is talking about some things which you don't want to hear, right. Why am I wasting my time, kind of so dealing with that is part of the TTO's job as well. Removing certain myths, and I will put down some myths as well. High level support is always important, commitment from the directors that this is the way we would do it, because they have a larger picture in mind, right, and if required they can put their foot down, right, depends of course on the circumstances, but they can, and they can also communicate that to the scientists that this is important for this organization, do it, right, rather than sending mixed messages. They also should not have to deal with IP jargon. Okay. One of the turn-offs for inventors is that they file a patent, it comes, examiners queries or some other office sends them queries which has a lot of jargon in it, right, which is relating to the IP law. They don't understand it, right, and they are expected to take decisions, right. What decision will they take, right? If you say there is a query about the fact that there is no unity of invention in this patent, they need to understand that. Or they may have an ego problem if you say that the examiner says that there is no novelty in this particular invention, right. Now that is something which you have to explain, what is the way they are doing the analysis and coming up with it and how to defend it, right. That is something which is an office task. Also if you are taking some sincere efforts to do licensing, it always helps, because then it is not seen as a fruitless exercise as well. A few basic things you can do. One is, as I told you, just respond to inventors, get rid of some myths, okay, and produce visible technology results, but there are some proactive things you can do. For example, visiting various group talks, right, seminars. NCL, we used to go to the science day posters, right, and see who all is working on what, and our team like Nitin, who was there yesterday, was actively saying, is this something which you would want to file a patent on, right. IP landscaping, of course, in large technology programs, and also one powerful thing which is possible is driving the TTO, having POC funds and having a decision on what should be funded for advancement. If you do that, money makes people talk. So if you can arrange money, right, people will also work with you on that. So if it's possible to create a kitty like that, okay, it's possible to do that. It's easy, it's harder than, it's easier said than done, but I'm just telling you that this is a very good way to do that. So one task I just want to suggest, is there a way by which each of you can create a POC fund? Think about it, right. I experimented some years back by requesting the director to allocate a small lab reserve kitty for that. Yeah.
I have one question
Yeah.
here. We were discussing about the IP, how you deal with the patent filing.
Yeah.
So suppose we create a POC fund.
Can I just get the mic, please? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Anyway.
So like if you create a POC fund,
Yeah.
so
how to how to deal with the patent coming out of those POC funds, or how venture center you people do?
So the simplest, no, first thing, let me differentiate the things. The tech transfer office is a part of the NCL organization, so there is no different entity. So there it is very easy, which is that whatever comes up belongs to the institution. There is no problem over there, right? What you are talking about is where there is a different entity, okay, and that is arranging the POC funds. And so you have to work out an agreement between the two institutions. We will fund this, these will be the rights, if at all, that you will have, right, and it has to be agreeable to both, right. Now in your case, there is a parent organization and your organization, both are led by the same person. So that is the person who should think and say, this looks like a fair arrangement.
So how are the things with venture center like?
Yeah. So as of now, we do not direct funds from here to specific projects in NCL, right. But if we were to, but we would do it to startups which come out, okay, and other projects, and people are free to apply to open projects, right. We do not take any stake in that, okay. But if we were to do that, right, if we were to do something like this, I would not seek ownership, okay, or joint ownership, right, but I may want to seek a right on the forward path, right, in terms of exploitation rights, right. So if this gets licensed, right, can the POC fund get a recycle fund from that? That is enough.
So you were talking about showing the portfolio,
Yeah.
your patent portfolio.
Yeah.
Since you are not being listed as a signee in the patents, how you are going to build that portfolio then in case?
No, so we do not have a compulsion ourselves to do that, okay. I think your organization, maybe they will ask you separately to show your own portfolio, yeah. But even there, see, you can have a situation where you have, even if you have joint ownership, the problem arises when there are multiple people taking decisions. So I could, if I was doing it in all good faith, I would say, yes, if we are jointly owning it for the funding that we are doing, I am okay with you taking all the decisions. I will not participate in the decisions. What is wrong? Right, because you are in the same organization, you can do that, right? Yeah, yeah. So it is always possible to do any of those combinations, right? What happens is people, if two approvals are needed here and people change, their thinking changes, it causes a lot of complexity. This is okay, your same organization. Imagine if it was an independent organization, right? There you have an even bigger problem, right? Okay, there, you know, it causes a lot of confusion. By the way, many cases where we have joint ownership by different research institutions, we have a lot of complexity, right? I will not name this university, but we had a joint patent with the university which has a lot of sort of people with socialist thinking. So we wanted to go aggressively to commercialize, and they had a view which is very different. You know, it was very hard to make things work, you know. So we had to, one person should only take the lead in doing it, yeah. Go ahead.
Very difficult for the leadership to get convinced for the POC kind of funding, but alternatively what we came up with is that a small committee which could review and then recommend for further funding. So that happened effectively.
But internal funding, right?
In practice.
Internal funding. Yes, that's a good idea. So if you can do that and there is some alignment with your TTO operations, you will get good people coming to you saying, I want to advance this further. I also file the patents and take it ahead, right? If you do not have your own, you can try to raise money from outside, okay. So for our spin out companies, we had raised money from DST for creating a pipeline. So we looked at 50 cases and then went with some 8, 9 finally, which ended up raising some money, okay, and creating companies out of it, right, which takes a lot of effort to do, right. It is not easy to do as well, okay. So that's just broadly what I wanted to quickly, I'll just take a couple more things. There are some myths which float around which you need to dismiss as well, right. You know, one people will come and tell you one cannot file a patent and publish an article on the same topic, right. These kind of comments we hear sometimes, because they think it is like two papers, because they are confused about it. They think journal editors look down on publications where previously a patent has been filed. If you disclose a patent over there, journal editors do not like it. By the way, these are actual comments we have heard from inventors. So you have to, for you Ashley it might seem silly, but this is what we hear from. Yeah, please, can you give a mic?
So there is a lady at MIT, an English lady, Fiona Murray, actually now Dame Fiona Murray, I hear, she's an economist, and she did some studies. She looked at nature biotechnology in the period before US patents published after 18 months. And she looked at a 3-year period, and she found there was a patent on the same subject matter in 50% of the cases. And she called it the patent paper pair. And there was another study done to do with clinical research looking at science and nature, and found that in life sciences subject matter, there was a patent about 1/3 of the time. So this is absolutely well established in the US.
Yeah. Patent filings, that they will delay your publications. Patents are not valued when research careers are involved, right. By the way, there are postdocs where, one line of thinking is it is not valued, another is that it is valued depending upon where you are working as well. Another important problem in awareness that you need to build is, in publications you do a lot of work on mechanistic data, right. How the process, if there is if the reaction, how does it actually happen? All that is not needed for a patent, and people wait unnecessarily before filing a patent, to understand all of that. So the the publication date comes so close to their filing date that they are in immense pressure, right. So you do not want them to wait that long, you do not need that much data for a patent filing. Typically you might have a different set of data, not necessarily the mechanistic data and so on as well. So some ideas, I think we are going to be short, so I will close with this, which is, think of orientation sessions for every employee that joins, right. Every month, if there are new people, you can, but this includes some of your students, PhD students, PAs, who are all part of the project staff, who are part of the organization as well. We run an induction program for all PhDs every 6 months, students, and there IP is and tech transfer is invited to speak, right. That happens in NCL regularly. It may be a good idea to offer a few students who are really keen on IP tech transfer to contribute some time in the IP and tech transfer functions as observers or interns, if their advisors allow, right. Sometimes it is a good idea that some of you sit in research seminars to understand what is happening, rather than just wait for invention disclosures to come at your desk as well. Scan all posters and internal poster sessions, scan project proposals that are going out, because you may have IP that is over there. Scan your organization for research capabilities and know-how, you might find interesting patenting opportunities. I did one large exercise where few of our colleagues went to every department and scanned for technology capabilities. So we had a booklet made which had everything for internal use, so that we could see how we could build on it further as well. And of course we did this in collaboration with the director's office, so that they could at least think of some other things that they could do around that also. In many US companies, even in India, their offices in India, you will find a wall of inventors, and they give a badge for most prolific inventors and so on. We never do that, right. And I could not do it in NCL either, because there was a lot of issues in that. But that said, if you go to GE in Bangalore, you will find a wall in the Jack Welch Center which has the most prolific inventors, the badge that is given. Same thing has been adopted recently by Mahindra, as I have seen in their MRV in Chennai as well. We also try to introduce inventor days and honors, right, as part of our activities where just like you would award a scientist, can we do this? Question is, at what point? When do you recognize an invention? When do you know that it's a big deal, and so on? So these kind of challenges did come up. There are lab notebooks which you can scan. There are conference publications. You don't want to slow down things, but these are some things which can be done. And there are invention spotting itself sometimes is important, and to teach even your research supervisors to do that on a regular basis. This is actually just one of Graham Bell's notebook, Ashley, right, describing one of the inventions. This one I'll take a couple of minutes on, right. So you can recognize a name here, right, all of you. This is our current principal scientific advisor, right, and this was a paper in Nature and Science, I think, Science, which was about carbon nanotube flow sensors, right. When this happened, obviously, by the way, he was very naive to patents at that time, right, coming from IC Bangalore, and he hadn't thought through it, right. They rushed to publish, right, and it was actually CSIR and Dr. Michelker that pushed for use the grace period to at least file patents in the US, right, in this case, right, at that time. So this is something which you have to be aware of and looking at it, because fortunately the copy of the manuscript was sent to Dr. Michelker, and Dr. Michelker asked, did you file a patent on this, okay, before you did that. Anyway, this is I just wanted to tell you that there is a issue of awareness and culture right up till the top, okay, and of course lot has changed in 20 years. This is 2003, okay, but that said, this is an issue which one has to grapple with and make sure that your filings happen, and good ones are there. You have a portfolio, you know how to manage it, and at least find a few that eventually lead to the end results. So I think we'll stop here. I will not take it further. It's already time for tea, right.